everyone. This is Xiao. Hello, 大家好，这里是小帆船 and welcome to my first art vlog. I don't really know if I can call this format a vlog, but that's what I'm gonna call it for now. I am a concept art student currently studying in my second year, or I will start my second year very shortly. And this series is really here to share some of my lessons learned. Because arting is hard and the struggle is real. So, for all of you who struggle out there, hopefully this content will be helpful. And for those of you who don't struggle with art, wow, I really do admire you. But I am part of the struggle bus. So, for all of us who are in the struggle club, let's get started. The topic of this first episode, I guess we'll call it an episode, is Photoshop brushes. Yay! Okay, I'm not gonna go through this entire menu here. This would be way overkill, and I'm sure there are other YouTubers out there who have done a much better job and can do a much more eloquent job of explaining what all of these things are. So I'm just not gonna go into detail about this, and instead just talk about how I use the brushes. So first, if you go online and look at any of these brush tutorial videos, you will find that the prevailing theme in most of them is that the person will tell you that the hard round brush and the airbrush will do basically everything you need it to do, and everything that you need. I agree, to a degree. There are a lot of very popular and very good artists online who almost exclusively use these two types of brushes. And their work looks amazing. These brushes can get you very, very, very far. For example, last year, almost all of my work was done using the hard round brush. I didn't really use anything else. And maybe a little bit of the airbrush here and there. And mind you, I now cringe at this art because I've improved since last year, but these are still, I would say, okay examples from my own portfolio in terms of just using the hard round brush. And you can see my brush strokes because I tend not to blur things or smudge things. I like to just leave these hard edges. But you can actually get a lot done. However, if you look at all this, there's no texture. And I wanted my art to have more texture. Like texture as in the fabric, the skin, and to add more texture to hair, for example, or if there are natural elements in the illustration like foliage and tree trunks and concrete and rocks to make them look not so flat. And so in 2020 and the latter part of 2019, I started experimenting with textured brushes. So this is work that I did in 2020. And if we zoom in on this a little bit more, and apologies for the resolution because I didn't use a very large canvas for this, but there's now texture in the flowers on his shirt and in the jewelry on her head, and even in the skin. You see that there's sort of a canvas texture on everything. And then if we look at some more later stuff, there's paint strokes here. There's a different texture for the ground and the fallen leaves and the stones. And on the roots, there's more texture of moss and greenery. So I wanted my stuff to have more texture, basically. And you can't do that with the hard round brush or the airbrush, because they just tend to be very smooth. And that was the whole purpose of this. And this is a panel from my webtoon, which for the most part I actually still do with the hard round brush. because it's just easier and I don't have to think. But for the backgrounds, especially backgrounds with environments, I have to think about the textures. And so even here, I'm using textured brushes to give me the feel of bark and the feel of trees and leaves and grass. So I feel like textured brushes are important, depending on the way that you want your art to come across as. And there's nothing wrong with exclusively using the hard round brush and the airbrush. They are very versatile tools. They just, for me, didn't do the job quite as well as I would have wanted them to, because there's just no way to get this texture with a hard round brush or an airbrush. So textured brushes were the only way to go. And what I found was there are very, very few tutorials out there that teach you how to actually use these and what brushes there actually are. The problem though is every artist has a different set of tools, and the textured brushes in every artist's toolbox are different. And a lot of these were just experimenting and seeing what works in what situation, in what context. So now I'm going to do a quick demo in terms of how I do textures by drawing a tree trunk. Very riveting, I know. But I didn't want to take forever, and if I drew anything more complicated, it would take me forever. So let's start with the tree trunk. I'm going to block in the trunk. Yes, it's only 2 lines, but trust me, it's a tree trunk. So I work with line art. Some people work with shapes and forms. Do whatever works for you. Everybody's workflow is different. And even now, I start with the hard round brush and the airbrush. I'll lay in my background colors with the airbrush. I get people asking me why I don't use the color wheel and stick it on the side panel. The answer is because I'm just used to clicking on it all the time. And I'm sorry if it annoys you. It's just what I'm used to. And I've been using Photoshop for years, so it's gonna be hard for me to change. So we'll call that my background for now. And I'm gonna stick in some of the bark in here. And maybe use some more of a green, bluish tone. See how that looks. There we go. That looks okay. Alright, so there's the basis for our tree. And you're thinking, what the heck are you doing, Xiao? Bear with me here. Alright, so now I'm going to go back to my line art, I'm going to decrease the opacity, and I'm going to merge down. This is how I actually work. I draw a sketch, and then I decrease the opacity, and I merge it down into my first color pass, or my color pass. And then I break out the elements that I actually want in separate layers using the lasso tool. So I've just selected my tree trunk. I'm going to copy, and I'm going to paste that. And I'm going to lock this layer. And I'm going to go back to the background layer and paint away the remnants of the tree trunk. So now I have a clean, smooth edge. I don't always like this edge because sometimes I find it too hard, but I'm not going to talk about edges right now because that's a whole different topic on its own. And there are plenty of YouTubers out there that talk about edges as well. Alright, so that's sort of my background now. I'm gonna pin in my light source. And I worked very, very zoomed out because it helps you get a better picture of the whole feel of the picture or the image. If you work really zoomed in, you might get a lot of detail in one area, but it throws off the entire painting. So I tend to work very, very zoomed out. Unless I'm actually detailing, then I zoom in. Alright, so I'll pick a purple here. Go to one of my textured brushes and just start with that. Ooh. And sometimes your strokes don't always work out the first time. Just Control Z and try again. Now I'm going to block in some more of the stronger light sources. Try and make it look like the light's coming through the foliage and just hitting parts of the tree directly. And if you look at references for trees, every species of trees has a slightly different look to the bark. Some of them are more ring-like, some of them are more crackly, some of them are more smooth, some of them are different colors. It just depends on what kind of tree you want to paint and how realistic you want to get with it. Always reference. Always reference. Can't stress that enough. And I also tend to use the eyedropper tool a lot because I don't need to mix colors every time. That'd be overkill. You can just use whatever is on your canvas. Add some more of this. Alright, so I think that looks okay in terms of just the texture lay-in. And then, the other thing that I like to use is color dodge. And if you've watched lots of art tutorials, you will know that there is another certain YouTuber, an artist, who really loves color dodge. What can I say? It works. So I set my brush blending mode to color dodge. And I add some highlights, and I turn down the opacity to 30, and I add some more lighting to the shadow side as well. Then I'm gonna go in with my textured brush again and add some more highlights. Go back to the airbrush, add some highlights in the background. Oh, a little too much there. Holy crap. That's a little too much. Oh, there we go. Something like that. And then you can add more effects, add a layer, go to overlay, and then change this to maybe a little bit of a warmer orange, and then add some glow in certain spots. Yeah, there's my tree trunk. It's not my most spectacular work, but you get the point. So, textured brushes are really important in terms of helping you establish the type of material you're looking at, and it gives me the feel that I want in my paintings. And so I think textured brushes are incredibly important. I don't think that they can do every single job that there is, especially since I started with traditional art, and one paintbrush can actually get you pretty far. If you use one textured brush for everything, sometimes it gets a little bit repetitive. It looks kind of fake in Photoshop. But just play with it and see where it takes you. And I hope this tutorial was helpful for you and everybody who's on the struggle bus. Let us struggle together. Thank you for watching. Until next time.